Well, hello there. So today we're going to talk a little bit about virtualization, kind of how things have changed over time, um, and we're going to get to containers. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how we could use them, how we could use containers, and how we can run them in the Learner Lab. Okay, so first, virtualization. And I'll link to this down below, but there's a great Wikipedia article here. It talks a little bit about, honestly, we did virtualization back in the mainframe days, kind of. Everything's on it and just running. But we then moved to hypervisors eventually. After we distributed out, we started to bring things back and running on hypervisors. So there's type 1 and type 2 hypervisors. The main thing is just realize that hypervisors can run on just hardware, or they might need an OS and run on top of the OS. So, and that was great because then we could run lots of computers on a single computer. And I remember getting these Blade servers, which were teeny, and running hundreds of servers on an individual server, which was, yeah, not big at all. And so we were able to shrink the footprint of the what was needed for our data centers. Granted, the power consumption per square foot increased, and that was kind of challenging. But as we've went through, things that continue to change. Virtualization was pretty big quite a while ago with hypervisors. It's still around there, but a lot of people are moving to the cloud and now to a operating system level virtualization that's not really the same as the old type 2 hypervisors. It's containerization. So containers don't run everything that's needed, so there's less redundancy in each container. So you can run on a leaner footprint. They can be smaller, and they can do some from the OS. So I personally haven't really liked containers, mostly because I've seen them used in a bad way. The containers that I've worked with, it's because people don't want to patch, and because their system will break. And let's talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to search a few. So actually, I'm going to open this up in another one so I can just keep the URLs. So I want to search for HTTPD. So this is Apache. Apache runs the internet. I know that it's, I think it's still the most heavily used web server out there. But you can see here they have an official Docker image. So the Apache Foundation has helped set this up. It's maintained by the Docker community. And some of the cool benefits you get here is that it's already partially pre-configured. I want to look at this tags. So if someone's maintaining it, you can see that they actually are also keeping track of the vulnerabilities. So this is the latest, pushed 21 hours ago. And there's, of course, you can use Linux at 386. You can use Linux AMD 64, so 64-bit, or Linux ARM. So those are the main three there. So let's just pick AMD 64. So if we look at AMD 64, we can actually see all of the CVEs, so the common vulnerability scoring that are, and if there's medium, low, unspecified, high, critical. So we can see here everything that's in this that's being tracked, and we can actually go out to the CVE. So one of the cool things you get about Docker using official images is you have the tracking of these vulnerabilities for you. I don't know a lot of companies that are doing this very well. So this helps. Now you could look at each one of these and understand what it means to your organization and how you deploy it, and you can do some things to try and protect them even more. But but you can see when a vulnerability pops up, it'll show here. The other thing I like is that they're patching these regularly. So hopefully, if you're using these containers, you have a process that's pulling in the latest version that's patched and updated. That's where I've seen containers done wrong, is they don't patch them. And so they don't get updated, they don't get security fixes, vulnerability fixes, and they get hacked. Okay, so HTTP, I want to look at another one. So I'll grab the search again. Just some that I've worked with before. Memcache. So we did the web. This is a caching system to help make things faster. We'll just click on that one. So same thing, we can go to the tags and we can see the vulnerabilities that it has. Once again, most of these are going to be Linux. I haven't actually searched for Windows images. Why are they Linux? Because you can use these without paying for a heavy license, right? They're open source. Okay, so 64-bit is the one we're going to usually want. I mean, some people might be running them on ARM. I don't know why you do the 386. Well, yeah, I do. On low power devices, things that are running actually older platforms. Well, smaller platforms, not older. Okay, so here we can see the vulnerabilities as well for this. Just because you have low severity vulnerabilities doesn't mean that it's an issue if you do things well. So there are ways to protect your stuff even more, network firewalls, things like that. So anyway, so we've covered so far a little bit about virtualization. Containers is kind of an evolution. I'm not saying it's the best, but it's an evolution. Honestly, virtualization containers is a great way to go because the hypervisor level has been suffering due to cloud computing. Cloud computing has really been stealing the thunder from virtualization. It's just someone else is doing the virtualization for you. So now let's look a little bit at AWS. So of course we could always run an EC2 instance and do Docker on it, or even a level 2 hypervisor. Now realize we're doing AWS is doing their own virtualization. If you're doing virtualization inside virtualization, you're going to have some trade-offs. It's not going to go as well as if it's, yeah. So the levels of virtualization you do have to think about, but it will work. So you could do EC2, you could install Docker yourself or Podman and get it running. But they also have Elastic Container Service, where you can create your own cluster and your tasks and run them. So Elastic Container Service is something that Amazon manages so that you don't have to manage as many things. And you can see I played a little bit with it to make sure I knew what I was doing. So there's another one actually that I haven't played with recently, Elastic Kubernetes Service. And yeah, I have not played with Kubernetes, but I should. So anyway, there are lots of different options. So we have Elastic Container Service, Elastic Kubernetes Service. We have just running on EC2. You know, I'm going to take a step back and go to Elastic Container Service. When you create a cluster, you can actually create it on Fargate or EC2, depending on the needs for your container. So, and then it's still managed for you. So EC2 will allow for heavier, more consistent loads. So anyway, hope you've enjoyed this. Talked a little bit about virtualization. Took me kind of through some history in my mind there of my glory days, I guess. Went to containers and then to Docker and helped understand some of the benefits to Docker since I've had to live with too many of the downsides. And we looked at a couple Docker containers, and then we showed some options in AWS. You can run, so I use the Learner Lab often for my videos. It's AWS, something that you can use at higher education institutions, so you don't have to use a credit card. You can run this. I will say that I had to assign a lab role instead, because I can't create IAM roles. So just whenever it wants to auto create a role, there's usually a way to attach the lab role. So it has some IAM issues, but that's okay. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. We'll see you in the next one.